Welcome to our April Writers' Room. It is so fantastic to see you all here tonight. Very exciting. We are delighted to have Florian Habicht back with us in New Zealand for a little while and here tonight, and the wonderful Robyn Malcolm, who you'll know from your screens in many roles. Florian, I remember first noticing Florian when he made WOODENHEAD, his debut feature, followed by Kokoi Demolition, and Rubbings from a Live Man, Love Story, the fantastic Love Story, and now most recently at the film festival this year, PULP. So what a remarkable achievement for a still young man. All these amazing films. So we're so glad to have you here, Florian, and without further ado, Robyn, Florian, please come on up, give them a big round of applause.
Thank you, Esther. So you want that seat? That's all right. Yeah, like the director who chose his seat first. What a pleasure to be here talking to this man. We've had this very weird, we've been sitting chatting for the last 45 minutes, and it's been kind of weird because I've got so many questions to ask, and I kept having to hold off until we were up here. The first thing I wanted to say is that usually the format for this sort of thing is that we talk for about an hour and then we open it up to you guys for some questions at the end, but we've come up with another version, which is that we will talk, but you know how when you're an audience member and sometimes you think of a question at the time and then you've forgotten it by the end, and then there's a bit of pressure for the audience to perform in the last 5 minutes. If you do have a question as we're talking, just put your hand up, and we've kept the lights up, and I'll get you to join in the conversation as we go, so that it's much more of a rounded thing, okay? And if you're just enjoying what we're talking about, that's fine. But if you do have a burning question as we're running, just it's quite bright up here.
Can we see the audience even more?
Yeah. Is there any way we can see you anymore? Can we?
We can dim your lights a little bit. Can we dim their lights a little bit more?
No, bring the audience up a little bit.
No, that didn't work.
No, we want to see you.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's great.
No falling asleep.
Yeah, we can see you now. The first thing we wanted to know is what Florian said. He said, they all look a bit arty, don't they? What do you think they do? So how many of you guys are in the film business? How many of you are?
It's funny you said business.
Yeah, sorry. What word would you use? The
film business.
The film business, yeah. How many of you are involved in the making of films? And how many of you are enjoyers of film? Obviously, all of you. Yeah. So what are the risks?
And making things in general.
Making things in general. Is there a sculptor here? Is there a? Awesome.
Yeah,
all right.
Cool. Awesome.
Okay. Where to start? You wanted to be a rock star. You wanted to be a rock. Okay, I'll rephrase that. You wanted to be a rock star. It's on.
No.
Yeah.
You wanted to be a rock star.
Okay. When I was at high school, my close friends were all like the nerds at high school, and one day we decided we wanted to be popular and have girlfriends. So we were like, we had like a meeting, and it was like, as you do. And we were like, well, let's start a band. So I came up with the name for the band. We were called the Empty Chairs. And
that's sexy. That'll
Empty Chairs.
Empty Chairs. Yeah. And what did you play? What were you?
We all learned our instruments from scratch, and our mission was to play the end of year school social, which is kind of like a ball, and we ended up covering Nirvana and Jimi Hendrix, and and we reached our target. We played at the school social at the end of the year, and we were just really, really well. I asked some friends of mine to record the gig, and they're up in the lighting booth, and they didn't know, but their voices were really close to the mic of the audio recorder. So when I got the tape back, I listened to it, and it started with a cover of Nirvana's In Bloom, and I was singing, and I could just hear my friends, a bit like those old guys in the Muppet Show who do a commentary. And the first thing they said was, "Oh my God, he sounds really bad. Florian can't sing. This is terrible." And you could hardly hear the band on the tape. It was just this commentary of how terrible we were. But then the next day at school, like, everyone said hi to us, and and it worked.
And did you, how were the girls after that?
One of my friends got a girl pregnant, so it worked. Whereas for me, it took a long time more. I got a kayak, and I didn't make love to the kayak. I went out to sea to practice singing where no one could hear me, because I was really, really determined I was going to make this my life. But yeah, I didn't have the talent. So then I got into art, painting, Kirikiri High School, and we had a really talented art department, like one of the best in the country. And I found when we did like paintings of still lifes, I wasn't as good as I was kind of hoping I would be. And then I thought to myself, man, I have to think of another plan. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make the art about ideas and not about the technique. Yeah. That can be like a way of getting around not being a good painter. So then I just picked up a camera and did photography. There was no photography department, but my dad's an amazing photographer, and he offered to teach me in the darkroom all the skills. There was a small darkroom, so I was the only person doing photography at Kirikiri High School, but it was all about the ideas, my photos, rather than...
What was the first photo that you took that you were really proud of? Can you remember?
Yeah, it was inspired by the name The Empty Chairs, and it's kind of weird. I just put all these broken chairs. It was just like the skeletons of chairs on the roof of the caretaker's office, and there was one gap, and then I got a friend of mine to throw one chair in the air, and then the photograph is just a line of chairs with one in the air. It looks like a Pink Floyd record cover or something. It's pretty naff, but
so
but, yeah.
when did the decision to go from the like the static image into the moving image come? Like what was...
Yeah, so I went to Elam, and in first year you kind of get to try out everything and explore stuff. And I thought I was going to become a photographer like my dad, and but I was drawing on photos, painting on photos, putting them in sequences to tell stories, and the tutors could see that it looked like I was frustrated with the medium because I kept like trying to do different things with it, and they said, "Oh, Florian, why don't you do film? Like do intermedia," which was a department back then, which was performance, video, film, and sound. And so I got into the intermedia department, and at that time, the word narrative was like a dirty word at Elam. Like no one in that department made narrative films.
Can you explain why?
It just wasn't a cool thing to do.
So it was a fashion thing?
Yeah, it was a fashion thing. You kind of made...
What year are we talking?
1860... 19...
What's the reaction to Charles?
Like 1995, something like that.
19... Right,
yeah,
right, okay.
School
Narrative was
Arts.
a dirty word in 1995.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
Well, my first film experience was there was a girl I fancied, and I had a hard time. She was quite shy, and I had a hard time talking to her. And I asked her in the Elam Library if she'd like to be in a movie, and and she said maybe. Yeah. She said I'm not signing any contracts or anything. Yeah. She's in here tonight, and then she said yeah I'll do it. Yeah. So then I was like, okay, shit, I've got to write a script now. So so I made up a story, and then I thought, who can I get to act in it? And I was like, I could get my dad to be in. I could do a love scene with my dad, and
and this was Liebestrom.
This was Liebestrom, and then another artist, Andrew McLeod, who you might know as a well-known artist now. He was a friend of mine at Elam, and he was so shy back then that he wouldn't even do his art at school. He'd do all his paintings at home, And then on the day before a crit, he'd ride in on his bike with all the works on the back, and he'd present them. And I kind of talked him into being in the film with me to play a shy paperboy.
How did you manage to talk such a shy artist who hid at home and painted into actually exposing himself, which he kind of does, isn't he?
Yeah, I can't remember my conversation, but I can be like a car salesman, I guess, but also like I believe in this stuff. So yeah. So the film's called Liebesträume.
Yeah.
Which means dreaming of love, and it's also a cheap wine.
And so that was the first thing you ever shot.
Yeah.
Was that
on 16mm on a wind-up camera, and I had to go into a cupboard in Ponsonby, my flat, in the dark, and change the film like every hour.
And did you kind of fall in love with the medium straight away? You know, like was it suddenly you'd found your thing?
Yeah, it was.
Did it all just suddenly click for you?
It was when.
Because obviously from a rock and roll to painting to photography, there's a kind of a progression.
Yeah, got to mix all those. Yeah, like I worked with a friend of mine, a composer, Mark Chesterman, who made the music for the film.
Yeah. And so, because you could argue that you kind of fell into filmmaking.
Yeah.
Or was it more of a search? Like
my tutors talked me into it. I was going to become a photographer. They just said, like, right last minute, we think you should do intermediate. And then I was like, well, yeah, okay, I'll give it a try. But I hadn't,
So when did you, or was there a point? Was there a point where you decided, you went, yeah, I'm going to be a filmmaker?
Yeah, it was when should we play the film?
Yeah.
And then, because,
Okay. Let's play it.
Oh, yeah.
No, I think we're all right. Can you see it? Are we in the road?
No, you're good.
Yeah.
It's like I used to be a paper boy myself too when I was young. My name is Bruce. And your name?
Harry.
How's the milk, son?
It's good, thanks.
This is Harry Dollar. He's a paper boy. Would you like a drink?
Hi, Bruce. Hello there.
Want to use your buffering?
jazz.
Not now, thanks.
I like jazz. Come closer to me, Bruce.
That kid sure takes his time, doesn't
You smell so good.
Who the hell's that?
I don't know.
Hi, I'm collecting phone cards. Do you have any blank ones?
Oh yes, do come in. I've been collecting these since I was a kid.
Thank you.
Donna, a phone card collector.
Don't be long.
I did want to ask you, where did the decision to put the chook in the shower come from?
Andrew happened to have a few chickens at his house, and when I went to pick them up one day, I just saw them and asked him if we could use them in the film. So it was pretty
It was
spontaneous.
a really well behaved
Yeah.
chook. And there may be the odd question around. Here we go. Yeah, there is one. Hello.
I was going to say, had you seen any Louis Bunnell films when you made that?
I wondered.
Yeah, not yet. No, never heard of him. At that point, yeah,
You have now, though, right?
yeah.
Is he one of your favourite filmmakers?
Not favourite, but
Yeah.
I do really like what I've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love the film posters too. Yeah.
The way you deal with the spoken dialogue in the film, where did that decision come from?
Because it was shot on a Bolex, and I got the film, I bought it second hand. It was really, really old film stock, and half of it actually didn't turn out. I cried at the lab when they told me only half has come out, and you couldn't record sound with the camera. So I was like, oh well, I'll just ask some musician friends from Elam to do the voices afterwards. Yeah, and so that was kind of, and it was, we had the question you just asked me before, when did I realise I want to make films? It was when we had it live at Elam. We had like at Elam 4 times a year these events called Live at Elam, where everyone invites their friends around, and you play the works you've made. Like there was performances, there was music, films, and when I played that film, it got such a great response and like laughter that I was like, oh wow, yeah, this is cool. want to make some more, and And I actually thought, oh, this film this film's gonna play in festivals all around the world. I'm set up, you know, and I'm still now struggling to get into some festivals, and it didn't get into one festival. That film, not one. Like,
And you know, I imagine it's probably one of the films that you're proudest of, right?
yeah,
Because
it's my favourite one.
Yeah. So, I was going to ask you about, there's it's like a pilot light, when something ignites in you, and I got a sense when you were just talking then that it was about, it was the experience of sitting in an audience, watching something that you'd made, communicate to an audience, and getting an audience response and laughter and. And your later films,
And there was also this thing at Elam. We knew when the live at Elam was on, but we all ended up making our films right to the last minute, and you'd be in the editing suite till like 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and then at 9 in the morning you'd deliver it into the technician's office, and then that day it would screen, and it was like that was really exciting too.
Kind of a magic.
Yeah, like
Yeah, and is that magic still with you? 6 features later. Just the...
it has to be a bit more organised now. But Love Story was actually finished like the day before the New Zealand Film Festival opening night, and I mean, but in that case, I was having heart attacks. Like it wasn't like exciting. I was just like, I can't tell anyone it's not finished.
So from that, well, I'd like to talk about WOODENHEAD. So. Obviously, back then you were on a bit of a track to make, drama as opposed to documentaries, right?
Yeah.
And this and WOODENHEAD, you had the music first.
Yeah. A friend of mine, one of my colleagues at Elam, one of the great things was I learned as much from my peers there than the tutors. It was really, and I had a really good year too.
Yeah.
But one of my friends said, "Oh, Florian, that was so good. I can't wait to see you make a real film." And I was like, "What do you mean? What are you talking about, Willis?" and he was like, "Well, like using real actors and proper actors and all that." And then for me, I was like, "Oh no," because for me, what I love about that film, like, when I heard that, I was imagining it with like Dr. Chris Warner from Shortland Street, in the shower with a chicken, and how would that be?
A different sort of movie.
Different sort of movie. Good idea.
Yeah.
But then I thought, okay, I should, with my next film, I had to make it more deliberate that I'm intentionally making films like this. And with that film, I didn't really think about it. I just made it with my friends.
What did you think about when you were making that? I mean, seriously. Do you know what I mean?
Not a lot.
Not a lot.
No.
What were you? What were the big decisions in terms of making that? In terms of the subject matter and how you shot it, and was a lot of it kind of problem solving, like the dialogue.
Yeah, well, it was like I used people I knew as cast because I didn't know any actors. Recorded the sound afterwards because there's no sound recording techniques. It was all, I shot it in the house where I lived and the neighbour's house for the exterior shot. It was really like just letting all the factors in my life kind of dictate it. And
the subject matter of love, which seems to be something that you've been really interested in.
Exploring that, and I think I was lonely at the time, and dreaming of love, good title. I actually made 3 films called Liebesträume, Dreaming of Love.
And you made all 3 of those films before WOODENHEAD?
At Elam, like sort of experimental short films.
So what was the time frame between those and then moving on to WOODENHEAD? Was it a few years?
It was a few years, but the kind of the thing that I had with WOODENHEAD is I had Milli Vanilli.
Oh, you had the dream.
The dream, come to me, and
what did they say?
They said that I should pre-record the entire soundtrack first for my next film, like all the voices, all the music, all the location sounds, and kind of do exactly what this film did, but do it the other way around. So it's a really intentional kind of process. So make a radio play first of the whole film, the whole story, and because I was not a very confident scriptwriter, I also thought that, okay, let's make a radio play of this made-up fairy tale called WOODENHEAD, and we won't shoot any of the visuals till it works as a sound piece. So it was kind of like, yeah, and use musicians, use people with beautiful voices to do the voices,
Right.
and then I can get people with expressive faces, and people I know that I'm closer to play the visuals, to do the visuals, and so it was kind of like how Milli Vanilli made how that was produced. I was quite inspired by that, so I made an arty film like that.
Do you want to? We'll
Yeah.
play the. This is the song, isn't it?
Yeah, Steve Abel made some of the music, and one of my favourite New Zealand musicians, and this is a music video we made to promote the film.
We got some. I read some amazing reviews for that film. I read a comment somewhere which said that Fellini would have been jealous of some of those shots. It's beautiful, beautiful. I read somewhere years ago that sometimes in the creative process, it's actually incredibly liberating to have a very tight framework around your work. Like the more kind of restrictions you give yourself, the more freedom you end up having. And I'm wondering whether you discovered that with this.
Yeah, that was really inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what were the kind of in terms of was there a precedent for this kind of process in terms of recording an entire soundscape, like doing a radio play and then doing the visuals later? Did you know of other films that had been made in that way?
Only animated films,
Right.
but never like a live action film. So people kind of, when people first saw it, they thought it was like humans, like puppets kind of thing. And I mean to say they're all amazing visual performers, but the problem with, not problem, but often visual performers aren't voice trained, like they haven't been, to acting school and that kind of thing.
Right.
And that's where the technique worked. But yeah, having those rules, like we had to complete the radio play first. But then actually what worked better is like we went up north and we'd have like a stereo where we'd play the soundtrack and then shot the visuals. And what you don't get from that music video is that often people's mouths don't even move. So it's kind of like dreamy, telepathic. Or there's...
A bit like what they were doing in Lever's
Yeah, it's like that, yeah. But then we found like, say there was a conversation we recorded in the radio play that takes place when they're riding on the donkey, and it's like some everyday conversation about cottage cheese or I don't know, whatever. But it was actually more interesting playing that audio when we filmed the sex scene and vice versa, rather than literally acting out kind of what's... So we kind of broke the rules a bit once we started shooting. Like,
it's interesting too when you look at the journey from, I'm just checking that there are no hands up out there, the journey from the short film to this one, that somebody said to me once that 90% of filmmaking is just problem solving. You think it's a great art, but actually, the weather goes tits up.
My whole time at Elam was making mistakes.
Yeah.
And at the time it frustrated the hell out of me. And every time I think, why didn't we learn about this? Why do I have to make this big mistake?
Yeah.
But then every time it was like, you have to think outside the square. How do you solve it? And you actually come up with ideas and, and kind of find your own style.
Yeah.
By kind of,
because the style for Woodenhead, or the process that you used to shoot Woodenhead, came from the solving of a mistake or a problem.
Having a Bolex
right?
camera that didn't record sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving on from that one, that's the last, drama. You moved into documentary after that. Was that conscious? Did you decide that?
While we made Woodenhead, I started shooting. I thought I was going to make a tourism doco to make some money, and then I immediately thought my parents kind of talked me into it, sort of caring about my career, and then I
find another string to your bow.
Yeah. And then I immediately was like, I want to show some of the places for the tourism doco where the tourist buses don't go, and then I was like, oh, like filming at a dump or something. That's extreme. I don't, but just some places, that you don't see in a tourism doco. And then in the Northern News, the local paper up north, it had a photograph of the winners of the Kaikoui Demolition Derby, and these guys standing on this smashed up car in a sort of victory pose. And then I was like, oh, well, I'd love to go there and include that in my tourism film. And then when I went there, has anyone seen Kaikoui Demolition? Yeah. Well, like the scene, as soon as I got there, we witnessed a car crash, and then got there right at the end, and it was pouring down with rain, and I saw I saw Uncle and John in their car, and I just pulled out the camera, ran up to them, and they didn't know who I was. I met them while the camera was rolling, and they were like, rolling, okay, kia ora, welcome to Kaikoui, welcome New Zealand. My name is Uncle, I'm about 48, and I'm about the oldest here. And on my right here, moving into focus, is my boss and manager, it's John Zielinski of NIFI. And anyway, I just rolled with it. And then when we stopped rolling, I actually got to meet them, introduce myself and stuff, went home and watched the footage and just fell in love with it. It was like, oh my God, this is incredible. These guys are amazing, and that was the end of the tourism doco. Yeah.
You said about Kaikoui Demolition that lets people up north talk for themselves, and I've noticed with all your work after that there's this kind of love of people speaking for themselves. It seems that you let them lead you, which is, I think, a beautiful strength. Did you kind of discover that with this one?
Yeah, I guess by not having a plan and actually meeting the people on camera, and and then the film sort of makes itself.
Yeah. And
now when I make docos, Peter O'Donoghue, my friend, he comes and edits while we're shooting, so we can shape the footage as it's coming in, and that way the film. So I guess, and that lets the people speak for themselves, and then you just kind of massage it and see where it's going to go.
So your collaboration with Peter began with this one?
With Land of Long White Cloud,
yeah.
Which was a fishing doco I made after Rubbings from a Live Man.
Right. That's now I want to talk about Rubbings from a Live Man, the film you made about Warwick Broadhead, which is just so beautiful and heartbreaking. And beautiful again, and there seems to be in that, which I've noticed in some of your other films, this kind of, in this one feels like it's theatre versus film.
Yeah.
But it seems to be also about the real versus the unreal, like what really is true within the artifice of film. Was that conscious?
Like Warwick's he's an incredible performer. He's auditioned for Shortland Street a few times, never got asked to be on the show, never been in a New Zealand film, whereas if you met him, he's the most incredible personality.
Yeah.
He's done incredible things in his life. He married his house in Grey Lynn. He had a whole party where he made, love to the walls, and people ate pavlova off his chest on the floor. Then he went travelling too much, and he had to divorce the house.
I love that he made friends with all the dust mites in his house.
Yeah. All the talks of dust mites.
Yeah.
Hello everyone, I'm home. And he staged these amazing, huge shows.
Yeah.
Where anyone could be involved. You just had to be willing. So there was no auditioning. You just had to be willing. And he'd work with community groups, sometimes with mentally special people, just kind of anyone who was willing. And lots of New Zealand, like some of the best New Zealand dancers I've talked to after Warwick died, they told me, they got into it from Warwick, inviting him or being in one of his shows.
So what drew you to making the film about?
So as a person, I fell in love with Warwick, and when I met him, I thought he was the most free person in the world. And I was selling a video camera at the time, the camera I made Kaikoui Demolition on, and he came around to my flat. He heard that I was selling a camera, and he fancied me, so he didn't even check out the camera. He was like, oh yeah, I'll buy the camera, and he just started talking to me. And I was like, wow, this guy's like out of it. And then we became friends, and he hired me to edit some footage for one of his shows. He did a one-man show, The Selfish Giant, that toured around New Zealand, and it was just him and the other performers were on a video screen. But then I really wanted to capture Warwick, because Warwick, he wouldn't let anyone film his shows.
Never had before.
Never had before. He said it's like taking an animal, a wild animal, and putting it in a zoo behind bars. That's what he kind of described it like. And so he'd done maybe 60 shows and nothing. If you were taking photographs, he'd come and grab the camera and smash it or pull out the film. So anyway, I managed to talk him into it, and the concept was that it's a documentary performed by Warwick Broadhead. So he performs the highs and lows of his life, and rather than having different people like in the film giving you objective opinions about him and telling stories, these are all played by Warwick, that he plays a whole cast of alter egos. So it was
it's beautiful. He gets to speak about himself in the third person, which I can imagine for a performer like Warwick would be exactly how he would want to talk about himself.
Yeah.
Because he's
like therapy almost.
Like therapy, but also,
Yeah.
he said a few times, being the actor was a way of being these other people was a way of getting away from himself.
Yeah.
And the way he seemed to collaborate with you and explore with you this relationship between what's real and what's not, and those lines that are constantly blurring.
Yeah.
Who is the real Warwick?
Yeah,
But
totally.
He said,
Big thing.
I wanted you to answer this question. He says to you at the end, because you guys obviously built up an enormous amount of trust between you, and him particularly of you. Like he obviously let you as a film crew much closer to him than he has anybody. And
we never ever let anyone film him before.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
so it was the first time.
And he was being incredibly exposing and generous of himself. And towards the end, he says to you, how raw do you want to see a person stripped back to their bare bones? What kind of vulture are you?
Yeah.
So I wanted you to answer that question.
Yeah, I was putting Warwick through a lot of pain through making the film. And it was largely, he was scared that when people learn all the stuff, intimate stuff about his life and secrets, that they wouldn't love him anymore. And I was pushing him. He didn't, a bit like a scientist wants to study some rocks, so you don't just look at the rocks under a microscope to know what they're really like. You put them under extreme heat, extreme cold, and you do all these things.
Crack them open.
Yeah, you crack them open. And I guess I was doing that because I was an obsessed filmmaker, I guess, artist for this film. I wasn't thinking about my human side. I was thinking more like Lars von Trier or Werner Herzog, which filmmakers that inspired me. I was more pushing towards my artist side, and I see a hand. Hi.
Yeah, pushing them and crossing them, etc., is exactly what you don't seem to be doing when we see films like PULP, for example.
No, yeah.
People are really opening up. They're really expressing.
Definitely, I stopped doing it.
Yeah. I can't even meet my family on film. They freeze solid.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that Warwick went with you.
Yeah, we had
Was there a moment?
We were both artists, and it was a real collaboration. It wasn't like meeting someone on the street, and it was. We were both trying to push or do something that hadn't been done. And
so I'm interested in terms of the process of this film. Obviously, you had the setup, which was Warwick as other characters and pieces of theatre telling the story of his life, kind of partly in metaphor and partly to camera, etc. But then there was the kind of cracking open of him, I suppose, as the film goes on. Was that something that kind of built as you were making the film, like you both sort of pushed each other?
Well, it's kind of what I wanted right from the beginning, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
So you went in there with a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a really, really hard film to make. Yeah. It turned everyone's lives upside down, and for Warwick, actually, it was one of the best things that happened in his life, and it was cathartic, or like he'd gotten all the stuff off his chest, and the next part of his life was the most he was at peace with him, kind of
And
himself.
it's a wonderful tribute to
Yeah.
him as well. It's really brilliant that we've got this on film of him.
Yeah,
Should we show
cool.
the excerpt from
Yeah, great.
Rubbings from a Live Man?
Hello, Warwick.
Receiving Holy Communion was very beautiful. We were dressed in our best, white shirt and tie, like little men, and the women, they weren't women, they were girls. Just 7-year-old girls, 7-year-old boys receiving Holy Communion, all primed up by the nuns, because this is a special moment to be receiving the body and blood of Christ. And we know afterwards it's going to be a big feast with jelly and everything. Yeah, fantastic. But to me, the girls were the best thing. They looked so beautiful in their frilly frocks, and they just looked gorgeous. Everyone's terribly proud. The parents were in their best clothes and kind of acting, I suppose. When acting holy, after you received the communion wafer, going back with Christ in your mouth. Yeah.
feel like I'm walking you down the aisle.
You are, darling. I'm going to get married with all these men.
You're not there.
I mean, I believe that if you really meant it. I don't think you mean it. So I'm ready to sit in now. Can I go in?
Yes, definitely.
No, I'm right back in.
I've got a big orange
No,
cap. It's got first over it,
Yes, Mike.
it's in there. Might be willing to have some, I'm sure.
My gum boots and
The
socks.
big blue one that's sitting on the other railway track. Well, I'm gonna start cooking in. Is that alright?
What?
Start cooking in?
Yes, please.
You don't cut your toenails.
No, my toenails have got fungus.
Oh,
No. That's not funny, I know. No, I'm not the perfect person.
no, this is awful.
It's just how it is. Going up. Ping pong balls, ladies' laundry, and a bit of tape. Water bottles, third floor. Saturday mornings, I'd get up and switch on the radio. I'd be in a state of hope, because I'd be listening to the rugby, whether it was going to be cancelled or not. And my hope was that it was going to be cancelled. Desperately hoping it would be cancelled. It wasn't cancelled, so we go to the rugby, and I'm scared, because you get tackled and you get banged into, and I don't know how to play properly. I don't even know the rules, really. But I learned how to play rugby in this way, in that running is good, so I'd run, and I'd run after the ball, but I learned to run to never actually get the ball. So I'd just spend the whole time running and running and running and running and running, and I got to a really good game if I never touched that ball. father played football, and he represented Auckland for rugby league. And he also was a boxer. And we'd get home from the rugby, and sometimes, once or twice, I heard him telling his mates on a Saturday afternoon beer, being somewhere, maybe within vicinity, say, "Oh, such a sissy, he's hopeless." And he was a bloke, and he had a really tough upbringing, my father. He was in an orphanage by the time he was 4. So he learned to fight there. I imagine that's how he became a boxer and a tough man, because hard work in an orphanage, really hard. Later on I came to understand that his life was hard. He loved us. He loved me beautifully. But his way was to be tough at times. Yeah. And his way of loving was to provide.
You seem to be really keen to show the backstage thing, like the bells and the whistles. And
yeah, we had a green screen for a third of the film where you couldn't actually see it was just green.
Yeah, you just put it in front of a green screen, didn't you? Yeah. But what's interesting about that is that you're showing us what's behind the shot, and then weirdly it seems to make the shot more magical. Like it doesn't take away from it. I mean, is this a kind
just
of
like
conscious...
playing with that.
Yeah. So tell me about that. Is that a philosophy that you've kind of...
It's just because I know that because I've made documentaries, and I know that everything you film is subjective. There's so for me, I like telling the truth through lies, but then in these lies that I create, I show the truth. So, it's just like playing with the whole thing a bit, like with Kaikoa Demolition, when you see the guys in the hot pools after the derby, they don't in real life spend time in the hot pools. They go to the pub after the derby, and that was just like me playing with kind of what's real and what's not. And so I'm just kind of always having a bit fun with it. Yeah. And so in that film, I'll make things up, but then I'll kind of have real things, and it's more just having fun, I guess.
Which is something that happens a lot more in the theatre, like we're very used to kind of those kinds of performances where you acknowledge that there's no fourth wall and that we're all in a building and the lights and all the rest of it, but you see it much more really in film. And yet again, which is what I find fascinating, it doesn't take away a scrap from the emotional, the drama, or this.
Oh, that's cool. The first time I tried doing it with a short film in my second year at Elam, it was like a film, and it went along as like a drama between two people, and then I did it, and then I remember my tutor going, because I didn't do it well, and she goes, "Florian, what the fuck were you doing?" She was like angry. She got really and I didn't do it well, but so I can see right from the beginning.
But it didn't matter that you didn't do it well for the first time. It was something that you would genuinely wanted to explore. Yeah. Well, let's move on to. I'd like to talk about Love Story. Yeah,
which is also because my life. On that note, I do so much filmmaking that it becomes my life, and that's why I like mixing the two, mixing setup stuff with real stuff. Yeah. Because, if you do, to be a filmmaker, it takes over your life. And then so I try to make films, I try to put my life into my films, so I'm not avoiding my life. So I work with all my friends, my close friends, and that kind of thing. And
so you're integrating the whole thing.
Yeah. So it naturally becomes this blur, and that leads to Love Story too.
One thing I noticed after having watched the PULP documentary and Love Story was that you make people great writers and great actors.
Yeah, cool.
What comes out of people's mouths is, you couldn't script it.
No, totally.
And as actors and writers, I think there's something rather sobering in that. Is this kind of why you've chosen to stay away from the writing and the acting bit?
Well, in terms of writing, it's probably ultimately because I'm not a great writer, but also when I've tried writing things and developing them, I found that the longer the process happens, sometimes the more the initial magic that you had in the beginning can get killed or squashed.
Right.
And that might be from not being, the best writer. But that's why I love to meet people on camera and push record the second you meet them. Because that first time you meet someone in real life, that only happens once. And that's so for me, it's really capturing that magic. And that's probably because I haven't found a way yet, and I'm trying to do it in a scripted form. And so that's probably why I kind of like that. And
so getting rid of every ounce of self-consciousness and every ounce of self-awareness that, usually one has to fight in this industry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that because with Love Story, it feels like it's not a documentary.
No.
It's something else, isn't it?
If you haven't seen Love Story, I ask people on the street while I'm filming. I was wearing pink pants in New York, and if someone smiled at me because of my pants, I'd just pull out my camera and start talking to them. And I trained myself not to look through the camera, so I was just holding it like this.
So you could talk to them?
Yeah, so it wasn't even so we could actually have as kind of human sort of interaction as could be. And I asked them for ideas for what could happen next in the film.
So you met a woman carrying
a piece of cake.
That was a setup,
red
was it? Or
velvet cake.
Did you really meet her? Or did you set that up? So the opening shot of the film is...
Yeah, I set it up.
You set it up. So there's a woman carrying some red velvet cake in the middle of New York.
In Germany, you see people on the subway carrying cake, but not so much in New York. Yeah.
And then the rest of the story is determined by interviews that you have with New Yorkers who then tell you what they think
should happen next. Yeah.
Did you stick to that rule?
Yeah.
No matter what, or did you pick the best ideas or the one, how, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we choose Peter, who came over to edit while the footage was coming, and we'd choose what were the best ideas. But then sometimes we also we took on ideas that seemed quite challenging at the time, and we acted them out. I acted them out with the actress, with Marsha, and then we realised that it wasn't a good road to go down. And then, unlike life, where if you make a mistake, you kind of have to deal with it. You have to be responsible. Because this was a movie, we could rewind, and we could actually go back and
And as you were, the editing of this film, the putting together of it fascinates me, because as I was watching it, there's the love story between the two of you that one's investing in, but also it's a story about love in New York.
Yeah.
And I found myself torn in a way between the two stories.
I was in love with the city, and I felt kind of the most alive. I just felt really on the planet, and just New York, that you can meet all these amazing people from such extreme walks of life, and interact with them, and record them on film. No one was camera shy. It was heaven for me as a human and as a filmmaker.
I think it was referred to earlier, because there's a sense I get that the way you work is very intuitive, and watching that film particularly seemed to be a glorious kind of collection of happy accidents, but I know it's not. I know that there's much greater skill than that, which is to do with what you're looking for and how you look for what you're looking for.
Yeah.
I mean, how does that, when you're wandering around...
when you watch the film, most people don't pick up on that side, and the kind of structural thoughts, and lots of scenes are scripted that you might think are real, and then scenes that you think are real, the other way around.
Yeah. How did you do the running over the toes bit
with the taxi?
Yeah.
The taxi didn't actually go over her toes. We filmed a scene where some people at a Thai restaurant, I just rocked up and asked them what should happen next. I gave them a little scenario, what had previously happened. And they're like, she should get run over by a cab. And then we filmed that. But what actually happened while we're shooting the scene...
Well, you said you don't have a big enough budget for that.
Yeah. Then a woman while the camera's rolling, a woman is like crossing the street with one leg in plaster and like on crutches. So it was just like, well, that was like a happy accident.
How did you, how do you get people to cooperate so beautifully with you? Because you really push yourself into people's lives, you know, and obviously you can tell you're getting them to do this stuff more than once. It's not just a one-shot deal. And they seem to really want to go on the ride with you. You know, what is...
Well, I confess New Yorkers love being in front of the camera already.
Right, yeah. Sheffield, though.
Oh yeah, Sheffield definitely not. Like in New York once, I interviewed someone that was totally off their face, drunk and whatever else, and I usually don't like doing that kind of thing, but then at the end of the interview he's like, "You want me to sign a release form?" Yeah.
I'll do it.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Do
Yeah.
it.
But also just when I was making Love Story, I was actually genuinely, I was pretty excited kind of by the whole making a film and not knowing where it's going to go. Like it was really, really exciting.
So when you began Love Story, it really was that. You didn't know how it was going to end up.
Yeah.
So when everybody, and it was fascinating the number of people who said to you, I think when you make love to her, you should discover that she has a penis. That was
everyone
is
said
that something particular about New York?
Yeah,
I was
definitely.
wondering.
Yeah.
Because that seemed like a very common response.
Yeah, so then naturally we filmed that scene.
Yeah, so you had to, yeah.
Which is, if you've seen Love Story, that's my greatest performance, I think, in the movie.
Right, yes,
Yeah.
it is too. It is too. I'm really interested why you don't work with actors, because
I work with some, definitely, yeah. Matt Sunderland, who's incredible. He was in WOODENHEAD, and he's in a new film I want to make.
Yeah.
It's more just I don't want to just work with actors. And Marsha was studying to be an actress.
Yeah.
So I'd call her an actress.
So your Pulp is much more, like a documentary about the band, whereas Love Story's in this kind of other zone. Do you feel like you're drawn to that kind of other zone? You know, you've talked about what's true, what's not true, what's real, what's filmmaking,
and I love experimenting.
What's documentary, what's fiction.
Yeah.
So that's the world that you're really attracted
to.
to.
I mean, I was seeing a psychic in New York giving me advice, and she was giving me film advice, she was giving me love advice, and this poor psychic was so confused because she right till the end, she couldn't work out if she's just being in a movie, being a character, or is this me or is it the character I'm playing? And so I was getting like, and a lot of psychics in New York, they want to make money, and so they kind of put it on a bit. So it was kind of perfect. She was putting it on and I was putting it on.
Kind of the perfect city to kind of explore that territory, right?
But then I was taking her advice. Like the whole thing that inspired Love Story was in my first week in New York, a psychic, there's psychics everywhere because they get good tax breaks. So I went into one and I asked her questions about my love life. And it was just bang on accurate, everything she said. She was totally like incredible. And then I was like, oh my God, I have to ask her a simple question just to prove this, that she knows what she's talking about. And then I said, what do you think I kind of work I do? And then she said, she didn't know anything about me. She goes, you're good in front of the camera, but please stay behind the camera. Don't ever go in front of the camera. And that stuck with me for a year. And I've always wanted to be in a movie. It's been like my dream. And I've gone to auditions, and I've never got a part like in a film, only in TV commercials. So then I was like, I wanted to prove the psychic wrong, and not stop waiting around for someone else to cast me in a film. And I was like, okay, I'll do it myself. I'm in New York City, we can do anything, that kind of cliche.
Tell me about Jarvis Cocker. Where did that come from?
Do you want a made-up answer or a real answer?
Do we want the made-up answer or the real answer? Both. Okay. Real or made up first? Made up first.
I was at his concert by chance.
Made up first.
By chance in New York. I was in New York, and I saw like Pulp posters when I was driving in the taxi from the airport into the city, and I didn't know that they'd gotten back together. So they were playing at City Hall, so I was totally, yeah.
Oh, that's the Fleetwood Mac. That's our Fleetwood Mac alarm to say that we're nearly at the end. Keep going though, because I like this.
So I love pulp, so I went to the concert, and I got to the front, and I wanted Jarvis to see Love Story. So I managed to jump over one of the bouncers and get onto the stage. And first I just sort of started dancing a bit. I didn't really know what to do once I was up there. And then I gave the Love Story DVD to Candida, who's the keyboard player.
Yeah.
And then she was sort of waving it around, and I started getting really embarrassed. And then the bouncers took me out the back, and I got a talking to by the NYPD, but for like trespass.
And then he said, "I'll help you."
No, I never ever heard from them again.
Right,
That was
never
it.
heard it. Okay, that's the made up story. What's the true story?
True story was that Love Story it got invited to screen in the London Film Festival, and it's actually quite cool that the story of how I got into that. I was in New York, and I'd submitted the film, and I hadn't heard back, and I'd sent a follow-up email, and I hadn't heard back, and I really wanted the film to play in London. And then a friend of mine came through New York, and she told me she just got a rejection from London. And then I was like, oh, so they must have been making decisions, or they've decided. And then that night I was out drinking, and I got home like at 4 a.m, and I was drunk, and I got in, and then I thought, man, why don't we had a really good review from Variety magazine for a Love Story. It just came in from Australia from screening. I was like, man, why don't I just send that review to the director of the London Film Festival? Like, I probably haven't got anywhere, so really I just did it. And then anyway, I fell asleep, and then I sort of woke up in the morning, and like usual, just check my email while I'm still half asleep. And there's an email from the director of the London Film Festival saying, oh, congratulations, we've selected your film. So I have no idea if it was because I don't know, but anyway, then I was like, oh, who can I invite, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't have many friends in London, and then I thought, oh, I should invite Jarvis Cocker and Pulp.
They've been big in your life in the past. This wasn't a random.
Yeah, I love the music.
Yeah.
Right. I haven't been able to do it on karaoke because I don't have it on New Zealand playlists.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of my favourite groups, and so I could compose an email, and I through a friend through it's probably fine to say now, through Finn from the Vales, he gave me the email address for their management, and then another friend, Georgie, this is how small New Zealand is, her cousin was friends with Jarvis, so she followed up with a text, and yeah, I got Teresa to check my email, and she thought I was being a bit hopeful, inviting Pulp to my screening, but then then I got a call from Jarvis saying he's seen the trailer to the film, and he wants to come, and he wants to meet me afterwards. So I met him in the cinema foyer of the Curzon in London and Soho, and we had cups of tea. I thought we'd go somewhere cool, you know, afterwards, but we just hang out in the cinema foyer drinking cups of tea.
Yeah.
And the night before meeting, I couldn't sleep that much. I was sleeping on a friend's couch in London, and I thought, oh, I should kind of think of a film idea. And it came to me while I was on the couch thinking, man, what about a film a bit like Love Story, where the real people are the stars and not the band, and kind of the opposite to an average rockumentary where the band are like gods and then there's the fans, but kind of make it in a more democratic way and treat everyone the same. And then when I met Jarvis, he was telling me that Pulp at the end of their world tour, they've got one more gig in Sheffield. I had no idea. And they haven't done any filming, any photography, any interviews, because they've just wanted to do it for fun, and the show's all sold out, so they didn't have to publicise it. But they would like some kind of souvenir or memory, and Jarvis had this idea of making a film, and his idea was just filming. There's a housing estate which is quite famous in Sheffield called Park Hill, and it's the biggest housing estate in the whole of Europe, and it's this brutalist, ugly building. And his idea was just filming the lives of the people that live there without stalking them too much, and then at the near the end of the film, follow them to the Pulp concert. And that was his idea for a pulp film, and that was really had the same spirit and kind of as my idea did. So we were kind of on the same page, and then Jarvis was like, well, it's a pity, if we had more time, we could actually make a film. And then that's when I had my car salesman hat, and I said, 6 weeks, yeah, we can knock something together.
Who came up with the changing of the tyre at the beginning and end of the film?
That was my idea, trying to make Jarvis look like a normal, ordinary person and having fun with it.
It's serious, because he just doesn't.
And one thing I'm going to say, what I really love about filmmaking, which is similar to life, but just the whole absurdity of it. You do these really absurd things and you treat them so seriously and don't question them. And when we're all standing around filming Jarvis Cocker changing a car tyre, I just thought this is so ridiculous, but it's great.
Yeah, and he's really into it, isn't he? Like, he really wants to change that car tyre.
Yeah, that was his. I think that was his best filming day on the whole shoot because he felt so proud of himself.
Oh, really?
At the end of it.
We've got about 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes. So, any questions? Yeah.
With reference to Love Story, would you or could you film it on an iPhone? Are you personally on?
I wouldn't want to. I'd get sore eyes, small screen, and it's hard to manage the footage if it's shot on an iPhone. If you can, the camcorder I shot it on. Marie Ness, who shot the beautiful stage sequences, she used a Canon Mark II, but I used a camcorder that cost at the time $900. It was the one I shot fishing film on, and now that camera is probably worth $400 or something. And when I had it, the zoom was broken. It kept automatically zooming in after a while. And after the fishing film, I said I had to get it fixed before I go to New York. And I ran out of time, so I just made it wide and I put gaffer on the zoom. And that led me to being able to film without looking through the camera because I wasn't zooming, so I could just do this. And yeah.
Any other questions out there? No?
Yeah, two hands.
How did you get people to open up at Kaikoui Demolition? Because that's something I found so interesting, is they were just so open to the camera. You said you ran up to them and just started.
I find Maori people in general are really articulate, and they've grown up kind of public speaking, whether it's in maraes or at tangis or whatever. So in general, I've always found Maori people a bit like New Yorkers, that they're great. And then.
Was it the same in Land of the Long White Cloud? You just kind of went up to people and were just like, hey.
Yeah, there are 1,000 fishermen on the beach, and when you drive up and down the beach, you can't really see them up close. So it was if we can see someone wearing a hat in the distance, let's go up to that one. It was quite.
And what did you say to them?
Well, I'd introduce myself and say we're making this film and if something about the project.
Straight into it.
I found it's like getting an injection at the doctor. That if you can't see the injection coming, it's a lot more less painful.
Yeah.
So if you start rolling the camera, and also when I do documentaries, I found that if people are nervous, once you push stop and say thank you, that was great, then the people relax and tell you the best story ever. So I've known when I say thanks.
Would you pretend?
So when I say hey thanks, that was amazing, I keep rolling if they keep talking, and then the people realize you're still rolling, but then they're in this kind of new zone of being, relaxed and confident and knowing that they're telling a great story, and it's kind of a nice way to work. Yeah.
I know lots of directors who work with actors that way. They just won't call cut because usually the really interesting stuff happens once.
Yeah.
The dialogue is finished. Yeah.
But this way it is actually the calling cut, me saying cut, that's right. It, is when they relax sometimes, like in Sheffield, because in Sheffield they were quite shy.
Yeah, but they were very open with you as well. I thought they were, the young couple, the guy with the blonde hair and the makeup by the river was...
Boma.
Yeah. I think we're up to time, are we? Thank you so much for giving us
Thank
hour
you,
and a half
Robyn.
of you time. You
Yeah.
are an extraordinary mix of
Thanks for coming
artistry
around. It's
and
amazing.
opportunism. and bravery and intuition and raw talent, and it's
If anyone wants to watch Love Story, I just put it on YouTube as unlisted. So if anyone hasn't seen it, if you just type in watchlovestory.com, you can watch the movie.
awesome.
Yeah.
For those of you who haven't seen it, I recommend it. Thank you, Florian.
Thanks, Robyn.